I woke up that morning in my Napa Valley home to the golden light spilling across the vineyards, the air crisp with a hint of grape blossoms. It should have been a morning like any other, peaceful, contemplative. But when I checked my inbox, the words froze me in place. Dad, it read, John's family has decided you shouldn't attend the wedding. You don't speak French, and it would embarrass them. You can watch via live stream. I stared at that email, my hands gripping the edge of the table. Every memory of raising Victoria alone flashed through me. Every sleepless night, every skipped meal, every extra hour of work just to make sure she had the opportunities her peers had. Every birthday, every graduation, every Paris trip I had funded. And all of it reduced to an email that said, "You are not welcome at your own daughter's wedding." I remember sitting there, silence surrounding me, the vineyard outside moving with the wind, feeling a strange calm settle over me. Not anger, not hurt, not immediately, just a clarity, as if a weight had shifted and revealed a path. Victoria had made a choice: arrogance over gratitude, convenience over respect, appearances over love. And now she would see that every action has consequences. I thought of the $150,000 I had pledged for the wedding. $80,000 had already gone to deposits, venues, photographers, caterers. The final $70,000, scheduled for the following week, would never reach them. I called my bank and revoked the letter of credit. Every vendor would be informed that no further payments would arrive. I did not act in rage. I acted with precision. I acted with purpose. Victoria was in Paris, sending me photos of floral arrangements, discussing menu tastings, laughing with her friends. She was blissfully unaware that the financial foundation of her carefully curated dream was slipping away beneath her feet. I watched her excitement and felt no guilt, only a quiet sense of inevitability. When she called later frantic, I let it ring before answering. Her voice was high, strained, shaking with disbelief. "Dad, something's wrong with the payments." "Victoria," I said softly, "I revoked the letter of credit." There was silence, then panic, then incredulity. Rage followed quickly. I listened without interruption as the daughter I had raised discovered in real time that her perfect world was built on the generosity she had taken for granted. I thought of all the times I had been there for her when no one else could. Her mother had passed when she was 17, and I had been both father and mother. I had stayed up nights helping her with homework, calming her after heartbreaks, consoling her after disappointments. I had given everything, and she had offered entitlement in return. It was not cruelty that guided my hand. It was justice. It was the recognition that love cannot exist without respect, that generosity cannot exist without acknowledgement, that every privilege carries responsibility. She would understand, finally, that the world does not bend to ego and whim. The days that followed were filled with a quiet tension. Vendors began contacting her in escalating tones, confused and frustrated. Photographers, florists, caterers, each one reached out asking for confirmation, payment, clarity. Her panic grew with every call, every email unanswered. I remained patient, watching her unravel not with pleasure, but with the satisfaction that truth, when delivered, has its own inescapable weight. Victoria's attempts to salvage the situation were desperate. She called relatives, friends, her fiancé's family, anyone who might intervene. But no one could reverse the decisions I had made. No one could restore the financial flow that her entitlement had destroyed. She realized painfully that wealth and planning mean nothing if built on assumed loyalty and unearned entitlement. Over the next weeks, I reflected on our relationship. I thought of the birthday gifts I had given, the vacations I had financed, the nights spent awake ensuring she had everything she wanted. And I realized something profound. Her resentment, her shock, her anger, these were the signs that she had finally understood. The lesson was painful, yes, but necessary. And I felt a quiet, unwavering satisfaction in that truth. Her wedding day arrived, not as a glamorous affair, but as a tense, chaotic attempt to assemble what had been promised. I was not there, and that absence resonated louder than any of the flowers or champagne. I imagined her standing in her gown, seeing her carefully orchestrated dream falter, and finally understanding the consequence of disregarding the people who had carried her there. It is easy to misunderstand love as unconditional agreement. It is easy to take for granted the sacrifices others make quietly. But that day, I learned that boundaries and principles are the true measures of devotion. I had given her everything, and she had ignored it. I had taught her everything, and she had dismissed it. And finally, she saw the reality she had avoided. Love without respect is meaningless. Generosity without acknowledgement is wasted. In the weeks that followed, our relationship was not healed, not immediately. There was tension, silence, and occasional confrontation. But the foundation had shifted. Victoria no longer assumed that life would cater to her whims. She understood that privileges come with responsibility and that respect cannot be demanded, it must be earned. I watched her grow through the ordeal, not from a place of revenge, but from a place of firm, unwavering love, the kind of love that knows when to intervene and when to let consequences teach their lesson. I knew that in time, she would remember this not with bitterness, but with gratitude. Victoria's first frantic call came the day after I revoked the letter of credit. I remember the sound of her voice, brittle, almost breaking under pressure. She was at a cafe in Paris with her bridesmaids, her fingers gripping the edge of the table like she might fall through it. "Dad, this can't be happening," she whispered, more to herself than to me. "The florist, the catering, everything, the hotel, I don't understand." I remained calm, even gentle. "Victoria, I'm sure you'll find a solution," I said. "But the truth is, you can't rely on me to fix something you've ignored." She laughed nervously, a sound that made my chest tighten. There was panic in it, yes, but also realization. For the first time in her life, she felt the weight of accountability. I heard her inhale sharply, then say, I thought I didn't think." It's not uncommon for children to assume parents are infinite, that love can be stretched endlessly like elastic, that mistakes are never final, that generosity is a given. But that is not life. Life is precise, cruel, and unforgiving in its lessons. And sometimes a parent must let the consequences speak louder than words. By mid-morning, her texts had begun to flood my phone. I didn't respond immediately, letting the storm build. Every notification was a reminder of how fragile her carefully curated life really was. Photos of flowers, invitations, table settings, all of them tainted by uncertainty. The vendors, confused and panicked, had started calling her directly. She had to face the fallout herself. Her fiancé, Matthew, tried to mediate. I could hear him in the background during a call, his voice strained. "Victoria, calm down. Let's call your father. Maybe he'll—" "No, he won't," she shouted, cutting him off. "He never listens. He just punishes." I didn't intervene. I let the words wash over me. Punishes? No, not punishment. This is accountability. This is recognition. This is the first moment in which my daughter learned that the world does not bend to her will. In the days that followed, I watched as her desperation intensified. She contacted distant relatives, attempting to borrow money or ask for favors. She reached out to friends of her mother, hoping for sympathy. Each call ended with the same realization. No one could undo the decision I had made. And slowly, I noticed a change. Not in her demeanor exactly, but in her perception. Her tone shifted from panicked cries to frantic bargaining, then finally to quiet, tense reflection. I knew she was starting to process what had been invisible to her for so long, that love, while abundant, has boundaries, that generosity, while freely given, demands recognition, that every action, every choice, carries consequences. One morning, I received an email that made my chest tighten. It was from her florist. "We regret to inform you that due to non-payment, all orders for your wedding are on hold. Please confirm payment or the arrangements cannot be fulfilled." I forwarded it to Victoria without comment. Her reply came immediately, a single word that carried years of unspoken tension. "Dad." I didn't respond. I let it sit. Let her feel it. Let her understand that life is not a rehearsal, that the stage cannot always be reset, that reality waits for no one. She began to call less frequently, each time shorter, tighter, more restrained. She had begun to internalize the lesson, the slow, creeping recognition that her entitlement had led to tangible consequences. And with that recognition came another, deeper realization that her father, the one person who had sacrificed everything for her, had boundaries she had never tested before, and now they were unyielding. Matthew tried to intervene again. "Maybe we can talk to your father together," he suggested, gentle but firm. "Maybe you can—" "No," she said. Her voice was firm now, a note of finality. "I have to deal with this. He's not here to fix my life this time. This is my responsibility." I listened to the quiet determination in her voice and felt a pang of pride mixed with a profound sadness. The lesson was painful, yes, but necessary. Every parent knows that there comes a day when a child must face the consequences of their choices, unshielded, unassisted, and uncomforted by default. As the weeks went on, her wedding began to crumble. Vendors canceled or delayed, hotel bookings went unconfirmed, and the lavish Parisian wedding she had imagined became a patchwork of frayed threads. Invitations went out late, flowers arrived wilted, tables were mismatched. The bride, radiant in her gown, looked around and saw that perfection was an illusion, and that life's most beautiful visions can collapse without careful stewardship. I didn't gloat. I didn't revel in her suffering. I simply observed, quietly, as the truth unfolded. And in that observation, I found a deep, almost sacred satisfaction. The satisfaction of justice, of principle, of love that guides rather than indulges. Late one night, Victoria called again. Her voice was soft, almost trembling, but without panic this time. "Dad, I get it now." I felt the years of tension dissolve slightly, like frost melting under morning sun. "Get what, Victoria?" I asked gently. "That everything. All the sacrifices, all the late nights, all the times you stayed so I could have more. I didn't appreciate it. I thought I could demand it, but I was wrong." The words hit me with a bittersweet force. She had learned what needed to be learned, but at what cost? The wedding had fallen apart. Her dream, at least temporarily, was ruined. Yet the lesson she carried forward would be more enduring than any celebration. And then came the final call, the one that truly made me realize the depth of her transformation. She was quiet for a long moment, then whispered, almost like a confession, "I'm sorry, Dad. I never should have. I just wanted it all, and I didn't see what I already had. I see it now." I didn't respond immediately. I let the words linger. Finally, I said, softly, "Victoria, that's enough. That's all I needed to hear." In that moment, I realized that the lesson, though painful, had done its work. She understood. And in understanding, she would carry forward not entitlement, but gratitude. Not arrogance, but respect. Not expectation, but recognition. It wasn't revenge in the traditional sense. It wasn't cruelty or malice. It was the quiet, unwavering enforcement of consequences. The demonstration that love without boundaries, generosity without acknowledgement, and privilege without accountability are hollow and fleeting. Victoria's path forward would not be easy. She would rebuild, piece by piece, lesson by lesson, but this time she would carry with her the knowledge that every choice matters, and that the people who love her are not inexhaustible resources to be exploited. They are human, finite, and deserving of recognition. And I, her father, had given her the greatest gift I could, the chance to learn the weight of her actions before the world demanded it in harsher ways. The mornings became unbearable for Victoria. She would wake up to a barrage of emails from vendors, each one a tiny dagger, a reminder that nothing could be fixed with the snap of her fingers. Each message carried a subtle judgment, a bureaucratic coldness she had never experienced. The caterer: "We cannot hold dates without payment. Please confirm." The photographer: "Due to non-payment, your booking is canceled." The florist: "We regret to inform you that your arrangements will not be delivered as scheduled." She tried to call me again and again, but I was steadfast, letting the silence teach what words could not. Each ignored message, each unanswered call was a lesson in the gravity of responsibility. She began to understand that love, no matter how deep, does not erase poor planning or entitlement. Matthew stayed by her side, attempting to act as a buffer between her and reality, but the frustration in him grew too. "Victoria," he said one evening as we spoke over the phone, "you can't just blame your father. You've been asking for everything and never acknowledging the work behind it." Her voice trembled. I thought it was all supposed to be easy. That he would always... I just wanted everything perfect." I could hear the recognition slowly dawning on her. The panic was gone, replaced with a simmering awareness. The world didn't bend for anyone. Not for wealthy daughters, not for spoiled children, not even for someone as entitled as Victoria. Life had rules, and consequences were non-negotiable. Her friends began to notice the strain. Invitations she had sent went unanswered or returned with polite declines. Some didn't even bother to respond. The social circle she had relied on for validation was now fractured. She was learning, painfully, that people respond to authenticity and reliability, not just wealth and charm. One day, I received a call from a mutual family friend. "Your daughter, she's struggling, but she's changing. She's finally realizing the weight of everything." I said nothing, letting the silence do its work. The satisfaction I felt wasn't cruelty. It was validation of a principle. Love that protects blindly creates dependency. Boundaries that teach accountability create strength. Victoria's suffering wasn't punishment, it was growth.
She began to take responsibility for herself. She negotiated with vendors, paid what she could, and canceled what she couldn't. Her luxurious wedding in Paris transformed into a smaller, more intimate ceremony. And in the process, she began to discover something she hadn't anticipated: humility. The kind of humility that comes not from public embarrassment, but from private realization. Matthew, too, changed. He stopped trying to shield her from consequences. "You've got to face this," he said, holding her hand tightly. "Not me, not anyone else, you." And she did. Piece by piece, decision by decision, she rebuilt. The tables were set late, but they were beautiful. The flowers arrived, fewer than planned, but vibrant. The photographers captured genuine smiles, not staged perfection. The guests that arrived, close friends and family who truly mattered, were present with love, not obligation. The day of the wedding, as I watched Victoria walk down the aisle, I saw a new person. Not the girl who had assumed she could demand the world, but a woman who understood that every action has a cost, and that the love of those who care for you cannot be taken for granted. She caught my eye briefly. There was no panic, no pleading, no expectation, just recognition. And in that look, I saw gratitude, understanding, and a quiet, earned maturity. After the ceremony, as the reception wound down, she approached me. "Dad," she said softly, almost humbly. I get it now. I really get it." I placed a hand on her shoulder. "Victoria, that's all I ever wanted. For you to see the truth, to learn it before the world forced it on you in harsher ways." She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I won't forget this. The lesson, the consequences, the truth. I'll never take it for granted again." And in that moment, I realized the depth of the satisfaction that comes not from revenge, but from principle. The satisfaction of witnessing someone you love grow through the discipline of reality, not indulgence. The satisfaction of knowing that your boundaries, firm but fair, shaped a person into someone stronger, wiser, and more aware. Her life after the wedding was different. She carried herself with humility, made choices carefully, and treated those around her with more respect and awareness. The entitled girl I once knew had transformed into a woman capable of gratitude, understanding, and true responsibility. And I, her father, watched from the sidelines. Not as a punisher, not as a rescuer, but a guide who had finally allowed life itself to teach what no words could convey. The weeks following the wedding were quiet, almost eerily so. Victoria returned to her Miami penthouse, once a symbol of extravagance and entitlement, and found herself staring at its emptiness. No grand parties, no guests to impress, no curated social media images. For the first time, she had to sit with herself. The silence was deafening. She began to realize how hollow her life had felt, even before the wedding disaster. The friends she had counted on for validation were distant. The ones who had once fawned over her invitations now barely responded to texts. The social media applause she had relied on couldn't fill the growing void inside her. Matthew remained her anchor, though he no longer coddled her. He let her stumble, let her make mistakes, but never let her sink entirely. "You're stronger than you think," he said one evening as they walked along the Miami shoreline, the city lights reflecting on the water. "You've got to own it, all of it." Victoria listened, really listened, for the first time. Her pride bristled initially. She wanted to argue, to insist that her mistakes weren't that bad. But deep down, she knew he was right. She started small.
paying off lingering debts from vendors who had graciously allowed installment payments, writing thank you notes to those who had supported her despite her earlier chaos. She realized that gratitude wasn't just polite words. It was acknowledgement of someone else's patience and effort. Then came the difficult conversations with her mother, who had tried to mediate but had enabled some of Victoria's entitlement, with distant relatives who had witnessed the wedding fiasco. Each discussion was tense, raw, and sometimes confrontational. But Victoria persisted, learning to express regret without excuses and take accountability without defensiveness. Through these experiences, she began to notice settled changes in herself. She no longer expected instant gratification. She no longer assumed the world would bend to her whims. Even her relationship with Matthew shifted. It deepened not because of romance alone, but because it became rooted in mutual respect, honesty, and shared growth. The hardest lesson, however, was internal. She had to reconcile with her own past behavior. Every impulse to demand, every instance of selfishness, every expectation that others would serve her desires had contributed to her isolation. And the sting of that realization was sharp. It hurt more than any social embarrassment. It cut deeper than any financial setback. It was the awareness of her own failings. Yet, it was also oddly liberating because with that acknowledgement came the possibility of change. Victoria began to redefine herself, not as a spoiled socialite, but as a woman capable of empathy, responsibility, and measured judgment. Months passed. Slowly, the world responded to the new Victoria. Friends returned, cautiously at first, but their warmth grew as they sensed genuine change. Professional contacts who had once viewed her as frivolous began to trust her decisions. Even her social media presence shifted, from curated perfection to authentic glimpses of her life, full of small triumphs, human mistakes, and lessons learned. And there was a subtle, quiet satisfaction in that transformation, one that was deeply emotional and almost darkly satisfying. Not because she had suffered, but because the consequences of her previous entitlement had sculpted her into a stronger, wiser, and more grounded individual. Victoria often reflected on the pivotal moment, her wedding day, when her plans crumbled and her father stood firm. She realized that no amount of wealth could substitute for character. No flashy venue, no opulent dress, no curated guest list could replace the value of integrity, accountability, and the respect earned through genuine effort. Even Matthew noticed the change in her. He didn't say much, but his eyes told her everything: pride, admiration, and a quiet relief. He no longer had to shield her from the repercussions of her actions. She had learned to navigate the complexities of life with her own strength. Victoria's story became a subtle lesson for those around her, a testament to the transformative power of consequences, accountability, and self-awareness. The Miami skyline shimmered outside her window, a reminder that life moved forward relentlessly. And in that constant motion, she found clarity, humility, and a renewed sense of purpose. She now understood something she hadn't before. Revenge or punishment wasn't necessary to teach a lesson. Life itself, when allowed to unfold without interference, was the most profound teacher of all.